You likely haven't declared or even consciously decided anything, yet you notice that somewhere recently, somehow, you've stopped. You've stopped volunteering first. You've stopped over-explaining. You've stopped being the one who holds it all together. And you can't tell if you're depressed, completely exhausted, burnt out, or maybe even falling apart. Something in you knows you just can't hold it all together anymore. There's a fear under the surface, wondering, is there something wrong with me? I want to share what is too seldomly spoken about in regards to that silence and need to withdraw that you may be feeling, or maybe even craving. There's likely nothing to fix or solve. Let me show you what it actually is, why it's happening now, and what it might be asking of you. Welcome to Soul Knows the Way, a podcast for women in the second half of life who sense a soul hunger they can no longer ignore, a longing for depth, truth, and a life lived from the inside out. I'm Kim Marie, soul guide and author, and I'm here to walk the journey with you. Let's talk about the silent quit happening for so many Gen X women as they cross the threshold to the second half of life. Now, most of us learned in the first half of life how to be the good girl. And she lives within all of us, especially in us resilient Gen Xers who learned that being good is the standard to staying safe. She says yes far too readily. She struggles to say no. Everyone calls her when things fall apart, and they expect the ideal from her. She likely ties herself into knots to fit who and where and how she's engaged. She is so good at being who everyone expects that she disguises and disconnects you from who you actually are. And there's a significant price that we pay for this. This is when we feel the exhaustion that sleep will not seem to fix, or the resentment and then the shame that we feel for feeling resentful, right? Or the anger and the rage that seems to come out of nowhere. Or maybe the loneliness we feel even when we're surrounded by others. Or perhaps our vitality has just flatlined and we're going through the motions of life that you're supposed to want. This idea of flatlining is actually measurable. I remember years ago having just felt complete depletion, no idea what was going on. And I went to an Asian body worker who focused on organs and organ vitality and organ massage. And after he was doing his work, he didn't say much because he could barely speak English, but he told me at the end, all he could say was, very flat, no life. Oof, very flat, no life. My organs had no life. That was a wake-up call. That was really crushing for me to hear. And this whole gamut of symptoms I'm talking about, the feeling like something's wrong, that we're depressed, that we're withdrawn, that we're lethargic, that we have a lack of vitality. This is what I call soul sickness. It's not depression, not in the way that most would clinically speak of it. It's not laziness, and it's definitely not something wrong with you. It's actually what happens when a woman abandons or betrays herself long enough that the soul will not tolerate it anymore. The accumulated cost of abandoning yourself to keep everyone else comfortable and adhere to the status quo, that shows up as soul sickness in the symptoms of things like exhaustion, depression, a sense of anxiety that seems different than usual, overwhelm, disconnection. There's a feeling of bereavement, like we're being deprived of something or someone that we know we're supposed to be in connection with, yet it feels like it's lost. There's a nagging dissatisfaction that we feel, a sense of emptiness, and that lack of vitality or lethargy I was talking about. Most likely, there's a certain level of longing for greater meaning and purpose, or even a greater drive on every level. We might even have a feeling of being lost or aimless in our lives, and we just don't know which way to turn. But why is this surfacing now? Why now in the second half of life? Well, the energy that it takes to keep being the good girl, you simply don't have it anymore. And while our culture and society would try to tell us that we're declining or blame it on perimenopause and menopause, what's actually happening is that our soul is recalibrating itself within us. It's taking the reins from the lower ego, all the masks that she's worn for all of these years. Our soul is basically done taking a back seat to everything and everyone else. Be honest with yourself for a minute. Where in your life are you feeling drained or exhausted because of how much ridiculous effort it seems to take to keep looking, seeming, acting okay in the eyes of others? Share it in the comments. What you notice might also help others see what's not been noticed. I so encourage you to take a moment to think about that. So, this longing to withdraw is very familiar to me, as it is for many of the women that I coach. I had lived a life doing everything right. I achieved so much and filled myself with what I was supposed to want, and even convinced myself I actually wanted it. Yet something in me was secretly starving. For years, I held onto and expressed a version of myself so convincing that even I believed her. I was absolutely exhausted, bone tired, physically, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. I was completely bereft. I had been living the good girl, the perfect caricature of the good girl that I had built to feel safe, accepted, and loved. Over time, at first, my apathy and withdrawal felt like I was failing. I thought for sure something was wrong with me, until I began to understand what was actually going on and how to actually meet it well, with wisdom. When I finally took the good girl mask off, I knew that I wasn't failing or losing, but rather discovering more of who I really am. And as I moved through the fear of both taking the mask off and keeping the mask off, meeting it instead of avoiding it, I felt a sense of coming home. That shift that I felt, that experience that I've lived and walked, is the whole reason this podcast exists. And I know this pain. I know this discomfort. And I wish I could say that there's a quick fix or a magic pill to take it all away, to make all of the suffering disappear. But I have enough grounded experience to know that it's a necessary part of the journey to soul alignment for all of us who've been caught in the standards of the status quo. We tend to try a lot of things to feel better. We take a vacation, time off, and that helps, but maybe for like a week, maybe 2, if we're lucky. We test out all the productivity systems, the better boundaries, the guidance, the self-care, the Sunday afternoon rest time. We adopt and even try to practice the just say no more advice, right? We try to set more boundaries, and we do a life review in desperate search of what's wrong. We start declaring what we're no longer willing to do, what we will no longer tolerate. And in some ways, all of these are ultimately a tidy, neat version of the silent quit that I'm talking about, but they're not sustainable. None of those things are wrong or bad. In fact, some of them may genuinely help. But have you noticed that the tiredness always comes back? Because these things like adhering to different practices and systems and processes, they address only the symptoms. What they actually are doing is helping the good girl to rest so she can go right back to her usual performing. She gets a certain level of rejuvenation so she can step right back in and make sure that somehow she's staying in control. Well, a silent quit that is ultimately ineffective, and what that means is that it's only a productivity fix or an added set of boundaries or just the good girl taking an amplification break or trying yet again to do it all right, is not what we need. You don't need to figure out how to wear the mask more strongly or take a break from wearing it. Something in you is asking for you to completely tear that mask off. That's why the checklists and the idealized moments of rest don't result in a sense of sustained empowerment. They simply don't work. They don't stay with you. A day, a couple days, a week later, suddenly we need more all over again. That slow withdrawal from life that you've been feeling is the silent quit. And it's actually not something to be afraid of. It's not some kind of breakdown that you're having. It's your soul finally beginning to break free. And a really effective silent quit is not just quiet quitting and logging off, which many Gen X women or women transitioning toward that midlife shift, that shift into the second half of life are doing. It's all over in lots of data out there. But those are just elements. Those are just parts of the silent quit. And yet the silent quit itself is not a midlife crisis. It's a recalibration. It's a shift from that lower ego to soul-led living. We're not quitting life. We're quitting the performance. We're quitting the wearing of the masks. We're quitting the good girl and whatever other persona or performance masks that we've worn to try to navigate that first half of life. We may feel like we just don't care anymore. But here's the thing, you're not actually caring less. You just don't give a damn about what doesn't align with your values anymore, what isn't yours to live out and to thrive. You actually end up caring more deeply, but you care more deeply about what truly matters to you, what you actually value. So this silent quit is not quitting your life. You're quitting the woman you had to become in order to survive life. And that actually is worth celebrating. When we can start to celebrate that this silent quit, this feeling of withdrawal, this feeling of quiet separation that we're noticing, that we've been concerned about, is reason to acknowledge something new coming into our lives, all of a sudden it becomes a little easier to navigate. That good girl was never you. She was conditioned learning that became your armor. She was built young when you were very little, and she was built to be safe, to be accepted, to be loved. It's actually a brilliant survival strategy. This good girl is an amazing way to survive a life that feels so uncertain and so chaotic so much of the time. She kept you safe in the first half of life, but she cannot lead the way to the second. The very thing that's protected you is now the thing blocking the way to your soul-led life. So the soul is what actually knows how to have an effective silent quit. This quiet that we feel in that is soul clearing space. Our soul loves it. Believe it or not, our soul loves being in the abyss, in the dark, in the confusion and uncertainty, in the chaos. It just feels this emptying and this process of sort of swirling from the void with a knowing that out of that comes the full force of creation. There's a deeper knowing that if we can sit in that long enough, the forces of creativity, of full expression, of full authenticity and integrity are going to come forth. But here's the thing, the lower ego is far from comfortable there. The lower ego wants nothing to do with sitting in that silence or being in that chaos or being in that uncertainty or withdrawing its control of life. The silent quit withdrawal makes room for something far more real, much more connected to soul and its mission. And it will arise if you listen and allow for it to rise. We have to make that space. When the noise of performing finally quiets down and you start hearing something that's been calling you, this is your soul. She has been waiting for you to step into the silence long enough to actually hear her. The quiet creates space for soul to finally be heard. And it's absolutely time to listen. This is not about some kind of permanent withdrawal from life. So I just want to be clear about that. The silent quit is a reset time, and it's spent to get to know your soul, to listen to her language, to heal the soul sickness that you've been experiencing and feeling, and to discover what your soul came here to create, to challenge, and to express in this life. It's about remembering who you really are, reconnecting to what truly matters to you, and preparing to step into the life you are now about to re-envision for yourself in this silence, without the masks, and with sustainability, with an everlasting expression that is able to stay stable throughout your interactions through life. We need to stop resisting it and actually move into it. This is how we have an effective silent quit. We can't just do the things and check off the list. We need to actually pause to be with what's there, to pause and reflect and discover. This is in many ways an excavation. I often talk about the descent to soul, and it's a descent for a reason. We are literally diving deeply into the heart of our being. And we're seeking to learn and discover what soul has to share with us. Another thing we can do to make this silent quit effective and not just something that feels stuck or even takes over and encapsulates us with a sense of that soul sickness that we just can't get out of. We want to seek soul language in its various forms. Soul speaks through dreams, imagery, archetypes, nature, creativity, artistic expression. All of these things help guide us from that felt sense, from a deeper knowing within that's getting us out of our head for once. We are such a head intellectualized, analytical culture, and drops us down into our body, drops us down into the heart space. It helps us to find peace and a sense of relief in what our soul is offering to us. And as we do this, as we're willing to go there, we can find trust in a beautiful outcome if we're willing to listen. But the only way that silent quit is going to be effective or actually be something you can surrender into is if you pause long enough to listen, to walk into it. So how can you begin to just get started with this? It doesn't have to be a big life overhaul, okay? It doesn't have to be some huge, massive change. It can start with one simple, clear and stable and solid and committed thing. And what it is to find one thing this week that you're doing purely to keep the good girl intact, to appease, to please, to keep the comfort, right? To not ruffle any feathers. I want you to notice. I want you to notice the yeses that you resent, the obligations that drain you, the roles that you keep performing and then ultimately becoming drained and empty from, the resistance that you sense to the silent quit your soul is asking for. I want you to notice these and choose one thing that's in those categories and let it go. Say no to it. You don't have to defend yourself if it involves having to say no to someone else. But you know what? You don't have to defend yourself to yourself either. So often we say no to the thing our lower ego, our lower nature is asking us to do in order to be the good girl, in order to fit in order to do things right. And we say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay strong. I'm going to stay strong within myself. And then we start rationalizing. We start going back and forth with all of the, yeah, but maybe I shouldn't do this, or maybe I should do it that way, or maybe just for today I'll change things and I'll come back to it tomorrow. This is a hard no. This is the one thing that you can do. And start with something super, super easy. Like, no, I'm not going to stay up and watch that movie with you. I'm going to get some good rest tonight. Or, no, I can't take that on right now. I am plenty full in my life. No further explanation, no defense, no big declaration or announcement, no justifications, absolutely no over-explaining, rationalizing, going into the head about it. Just feel the no, feel the noticing of where you are ready to drop something and let go of something that you have been doing out of those good girl roles and say no to it. You don't owe anyone an explanation or need to defend your no. A simple thank you, but no thanks. Or that's not going to work for me is more than sufficient, even to yourself, Let whoever's on the other end of that no feel whatever they feel, including your lower ego. That's their business. Your task is to listen to your soul and to honor her and to not manage the expectations or the comfort of others, even the good girl or your lower ego. So choose one thing you can say no to this week, you can put down, you can let go of, that you've been doing simply to keep the good girl alive and avoid the silent quit that your soul's actually been asking for. Now, I should warn you about something that is important to know in this process. That good girl, she's not going to go quietly. She can be pretty darn stubborn, especially at first. She's part of the fragmented parts of your soul that the lower ego uses to stay in control. These fragmented parts get lost through the traumas and experiences of our early part of life. And this good girl is one of those parts. Remember, I said she became the armor and not really the true voice of what you need in this life. And so she'll frequently try to come back, and we will be tempted to entertain her. The guilt will show up. The temptation to give in will be really hard to resist sometimes. And the people that are used to the old you will push back and maybe even make a villain out of you. This is part of crossing the threshold to your more empowered, soul-led second half of life. I'm not saying that we can't be kind. I'm not saying that we can't be considerate in the process or tactful in the process. What I'm saying is, if we're ever going to get to that place of feeling far more empowered, we must let this silent quit be effective by not giving in to the need to explain or push back or defend or anything. All of the feelings that we're having, feelings of the temptation, feelings of the shame or the guilt, it's part of burning away the old to make room for the new. It's part of the journey to soul. I invite you to take this contemplation with you to go deeper, to ask yourself, where in my life am I performing or wearing a mask instead of living my truth? And what would I let go of first, if I trusted it was actually safe to do so? Even consider what you need to feel safe, to resist falling into old patterns, and to actually lay down the masks for good. What do you really need to make that happen? When you practice, even failing a few times along the way, things genuinely begin to change, and they change so significantly for the better. Your energy and sense of vitality returns. Relationships may thin out, but the ones you maintain or create will be so much richer, so much more trustworthy, so much more valuable, something that you can lean into and know that you can be yourself in. You'll begin to feel relief in finally being the main character of your life and not feeling like you're trying out or auditioning for that role anymore, like you're trying to live up to the expectations of life anymore in order to live your life. Think about how absurd that is and how much we buy into that story, that idea. It's time to be the main character. And so I invite you to imagine your version of what laying the good girl mask to rest looks like. Is it freeing? Is it calming? Is it filled with possibility? Maybe it's a little too scary to imagine at this moment or at first. And that's why just that one little step is all you need to take in that direction for now. One step, one tiny thing, one tiny noticing of where you're wearing the mask, where you're willing to let go of it and say no and not let the good girl take over in a certain moment. And if you do that, pretty soon you'll be able to see the empowered life waiting for you on the other side of this threshold. I work with so many women who come to me feeling the exhaustion that I've been talking about, slowly withdrawing from life, terrified that something's wrong or they're failing, or just longing for support to stay on track to where they know they could go, what they know is possible for them. And yet they are so done. They're at their wits' end. They're frustrated and really longing to find their way through this. We may feel like we're falling apart in this experience of silent quitting, but we're actually waking up. And it's not easy to see this alone. And it's even more difficult to actually cross the threshold on our own. You can think of it like the addict who has gone through a recovery program and they're trying their best to stay sober. But they know that if they go back to the environment, to the way things were that perpetuated their addiction, or if they don't have support to contact to help them stay on track, they have a very good chance of falling off the wagon. They need regular support to check in with and stay aligned. Without support, it's very difficult to remain strong when pushback and the temptation to remain stuck in the old patterns shows up. It's very difficult to stay in that space of listening to soul and stand in it, even when we're being sort of attacked or pushed from every angle we could think of. This is why I do this work, to support women to step into the fullness of who they truly are, beyond the performing, the self-abandonment, and the self-betrayal. I walk women through the stages of the journey to soul that allow us to live life in full color, in full vibrance once again. Your own silent quitting or withdrawal that you feel might just be the signal your soul's been longing for you to hear. And if you have felt this quiet withdrawal, this feeling of wanting to just step away for a while, share in the comments. Let me know how it shows up for you. I promise you are not the only one. It's far more common than not. And far more of us are suffering with this than need to, especially when we can start talking about it more openly and name what is going on. If something in you is ready to stop performing and start reclaiming the life that your soul's been calling you toward, I made you a free guide and it's called The 7 Keys to Reclaim Your Soul. It contains 7 ways that you can begin coming home to yourself, one small practice at a time. It's my gift to you, and there's a podcast episode, an audio expansion of each key to walk through them with you, and you'll find that linked in the description. And if you're ready to walk the path with others that will help you to stay strong and not fall off the wagon anymore, you may be interested in my Solace program. You can even do this with personalized coaching if that's what feels right for you. And participating in the group as much or as little as you want is completely your option. You don't have to be part of the group right now if that doesn't feel right, but there are options for personalized support with a whole library of tools and guidance to help you along the way. And I just want you to know that being held in this soul support sanctuary offers structure and guidance to remember who you truly are, to connect with what matters most to you, and ultimately rebirth yourself into the life you can now re-envision for yourself with that remembering and reconnecting. These are the stages of the journey to soul, and I'd be so honored to walk you through these stages so that the good girl that's become so exhausted can finally rest and your soul can finally shine. The doors are there, open, information in the description whenever your soul is ready. So if you felt withdrawn lately, if you've been pulling back and unsure or confused about what it all means, know this: you're not falling apart, you're not failing, and there's definitely nothing wrong with you. You're not giving up on life, and life's not giving up on you. You're just silently quitting the woman that you had to become in order to survive that life in the first half of your life, so that you can thrive in the second half. The quiet isn't the end of something. It's actually an opening, a new beginning. And what's on the other side is such a gift. It's such a treasure. It's your fully expressed soul that is so ready to emerge and shine through you. Until next time, keep tuning into the language of soul, because soul knows the way.